Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. There are a couple people awake. This is a good thing. I'm Ned Hill. I'm the Dean of the Levin College of Urban Affairs at Cleveland State University, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome so many people to the Roberta Steinbacher atrium. Roberta made a wonderful gift to the college, and we're absolutely pleased to be able to name the atrium after her. The reason why you're here, though, is not to listen to me talk a bits and pieces about the college. The reason why you're all here is to listen to the people on this panel. The reason why you're here is to be able to think about the way our region is changing, the way we're becoming a region. The reason why you're here is to look, think about, and contribute to the changes that the region, to the ideas behind the Regional Prosperity Initiative. The initiative has been working hard for, let's see, Mayor Lyons, 3 years, I believe. And they've reached a point where they're walking around Columbus. They've got some legislation, but the most important thing for us is they actually started a regional conversation that has taken us from Youngstown to Lorraine and south down to Worcester into Columbiana County. I think I got most of the map in a conversation that's a very difficult one, and it's been there today. I wanted to acknowledge the fact that there are a large number of partners that have made this forum possible today. First among them is our partner on so many activities, is IdeaStream, and I want to acknowledge Jerry Worm. I know you're in here somewhere. Jerry, thank you so much. IdeaStream has been airing the new Metropolis documentaries that lay out all these issues about space, age, transition. IdeaStream is a partner in the Changing Gears series, which looks at the area between Pittsburgh and Detroit, I guess, to Chicago, and really looking at the way older industrial areas are trying to bring forward new products, new economies, and new economic purpose. I don't know if any of you saw it, but on Sunday, IdeaStream, WVIZ, broadcast A Crack in the Pavement on Channel 25, which is a documentary that looks at the very same discussion that's taking place in the Cincinnati area, and it really is talking about how in Southern Ohio, how do you prevent or encourage older suburbs to hold on to their businesses and to be able to compete with the newer Bloombergs that's around them. In their case, they actually not only go north, but they also go south into Kentucky. Our sponsors for the film that you'll be seeing, and in fact sponsors of much of the activity on regionalism in Northeast Ohio, are the Surden and Ford Foundations out of New York. They both sponsored the new Metropolis, and I really do want to thank Andrea and Taurus and Taurus Production Center. Did I get that right, last name? Torichik. You know, in this community, we should be able to pronounce that. I'll do a double dose of pierogies later to make certain that we deal with this. But they've helped. Their film has really convened a number of similar conversations around the country. I do have to make a plea to you, or at least take a couple seconds of airtime. The forum that you've seen was supported by the Urban University program, and as many of you know, in the last budget, the UUP was cut, and this Cleveland State University stepped in and filled the gap, and has made the forum possible for the past 2 years. As we don't have any firm budget numbers, but our expectation is that the state instructional subsidy is going to be cut fairly dramatically in the next budget season, which really puts the forum program very much in a bubble. And I've been encouraging Kathy and Molly to try to get to more independent financial footing underneath the forum, because it would be a tragedy to lose what we're all been part of. So if any of you think warm thoughts about the forum, I encourage you to think about supporting the forum financially, or if you know of people that may want to sponsor individual forum programs, please let me, Kathy, or Molly know, because the civic conversation that's taken place in this atrium will be put very much at risk next year. I do thank President Berkman, who has been really concerned about this and is trying to find ways to support the forum financially. But the university's first priority is going to be going to our students and degree completion and scholarships into the next biennium. All of these forums are recorded, so you'll be able to find them on the forum website. You'll see the camera up there now. When it comes to the specifics about the Regional Prosperity Initiative, I'm going to leave that to Mayor Lyons. You don't want a guy who's sitting on the outside who's going to make it up. You want the person on the inside to lead the discussion. Your moderator today is Dan Moulthrop. And Dan has been a very good friend of the college, university, and I think that we may have been one of his first stops when he came to Cleveland a few years ago. And Dan is an award-winning journalist. He's an author, a former teacher, and a California transplant. And we love people who figure out how to arbitrage housing markets the right way. Dan joined the Civic Commons after 5 years at IdeaStream and the host of WCPN's The Sound of Ideas. And I will not tell you what I normally call that show because it shows that I've been listening forever and didn't make the transition. In the last year, the program was named the best local public affairs program in the nation by the Public Radio News Directors. Congratulations not only to Dan, but to IdeaStream for putting together such a terrific, informative source for the community. And Dan is also a co-author of Teachers Have It Easy, The Big Sacrifice and Small Salaries of America's Teachers. Came out in 2005. It's a book that really foreshadowed many of the discussions that are taking place in Ohio over the future of teaching and teaching as a profession. Dan is a graduate at University of California, Berkeley School of Journalism, and now I turn it on over to Dan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ned.
Pleasure.
I am not going to take a whole lot of time right now. Ned has ably set the stage for us, and I'm just going to say a couple of things and then turn the mic over to Andrea Torice, the filmmaker of the new Metropolis series, A Crack in the Pavement.
Now you took her from Eastern European to French.
She told me that's how to pronounce it. I asked. See, Ned, I asked. I just found out. Okay. At any rate, I really want to thank you all for coming out tonight. This is a very important conversation that we're having, and it's not just happening here in this atrium, but this is a conversation, as Ned alluded, that is happening all across the country right now in inner-ring suburbs and metropolises around the country who are dealing with some of the same problems and dealing with a lack of resources that is forcing us to really rethink how we do business and how we do the business of government, how we make sure that government does what it's supposed to do, which is serve the citizens. I want to tell you a little bit about Andrea Torice. She used to work at KQED in California, and she's now an award-winning independent documentary and television producer. And the new Metropolis, as you know, which is airing tomorrow night at 10:30. Set your DVRs, because if you're like me, you'll be asleep by then. But tomorrow night at 10:30 on WVIZ PBS, that's channel 25. Or 2, depending on how you get your television. Before we get started, though, is there anybody here who does not live inside Cuyahoga County? How many people do we have from outside Cuyahoga County? Excellent. Okay, because this is a regional conversation, and it's nice to know that that we have a regional audience. Anyway, Andrea is the owner of Torice Productions. She's working on a ton of projects. This is one of the most important projects that she's been doing lately. And this forum today, this engagement exercise that we're involved in, is one of a series that have been happening in across the country, as Ned said. Andrea Torice, she's going to show us a few clips that will help us get started, get the conversation going. Andrea Torice.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here, and I want to thank all of the sponsors and the panelists and you for coming to have a conversation about how we can create a new metropolis, a vibrant and prosperous region here in the Cleveland area. As Dan and Ned said, I made this film for many reasons, and mostly it's to help humanize the stories that complex public policies, especially around land use and transportation policies, have on our daily lives. So, and I thought that given that the Cleveland region is at a very important place, I know that we are all having a tough time, you know, we know about the new normal, that I wanted to help inspire and launch your conversations with the panelists on how to collaborate by showing you just some clips of the films to help you see the emotional and practical connections that people on the ground day to day are dealing with. A lot of people say, well, why do something about these issues that you're all here to cover? And I wanted to say that as a journalist and as a filmmaker, I want to offer you all hope and inspiration, because as I've traveled across the country in doing screenings and also in filming, I have met so many ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Ordinary people having to revitalize their communities, having incredible odds, and they've done it. It's a lot of hard work. It takes a long time. It takes building collaborations with partners that you may not otherwise be a partner with, but it has happened, and I've witnessed these, and I've tried to capture some of these in these documentaries. And that's why I'm so excited to be here at this moment to see what the next steps for Cleveland region might be. And so with that, now if Morgan has got it, I'm going to tell you, since for those of you who haven't seen, I'm just showing you the 2 promo clips of the 2 episodes. I'm planning a 3rd one, and I might be coming back to Cleveland, I hope. The New Metropolis, episode 1 is called A Crack in the Pavement, and it looks at the tax policy and infrastructure crisis facing all of Ohio and many other parts of the country. And it features a day in the life of a city manager in Madeira, Ohio, outside of Cincinnati. And the 2nd one, The New Neighbors, is a very inspiring story of how a town was able to turn itself around and revitalize itself through a program of intentional integration. So with that, I'm going to okay. And I'm technologically phobic, so let's see. Thank you, Morgan.
I remember always hearing, Pennsauken is changing. All that phrase meant was, there are more blacks, Latinos, and Asians moving into Pennsauken than we're comfortable with, so we have to go.
It was clearly white flight. And I said, you know, somebody's got to do something about this.
Welcome, all you new neighbors. We're glad you moved in.
They sprang up, surrounding America's bustling, crowded cities. Now these original suburbs find themselves threatened.
The cost of replacing infrastructure is astronomical.
We have no idea how we're going to fund it. We have no idea.
You've got one community after another falling by the wayside.
First suburbs and their challenges are evidence of the crack in the pavement.
First suburbs like Madeira are finding out that the roads and sewers laid down years ago with government support are worn out and need to be repaired.
Where's this going to take us, Tom?
This is a very large stormwater culvert that drains about 2/3 of Madeira. See, there's a lot of damage up here, some damage occurring up here. This is where it's starting to seep, and that seam is going to go. While it seems to be minor, it shows some slippage between the sections of the pipe. There's actually a lot more damage in the front. But the potential is in a heavy storm that these sections will actually separate and collapse. We've seen that happen in other areas. And with the volume of water that comes through here, we could lose this section very easily. And then what happens is that we get a very significant flooding condition, which would have an impact on the roadway, an impact on downstream properties, and potentially an impact on upstream properties.
So Tom, what is it going to cost to replace this?
Well, we're looking at between $500,000 and $1 million.
Tom delivers the bad news to the city council.
We're looking at a couple of projects down on Camargo Road that are going to hit us here in probably the next 3 or 4 years. The first project is the stabilization wall on Camargo Road, and that wall is going to give way at some point. The other project is there's a very large culvert that will have to be relined. We did one section of the culvert about, Rick, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
About that? It was $600,000.
What do you see in the next few years?
We're actually seeing less money. To be honest with you, John, it's only going to get worse. We have no idea how we're going to fund it. We have no idea. Unless we were to raise our tax rates astronomically to cover those costs, and that's just not feasible. The moment we do that, we drive more people out of town.
The cost of replacing infrastructure is astronomical. It's way beyond the means of even prosperous communities today.
A delegation of the group goes to the state capitol to convince lawmakers that policy change is needed. They find that their task is not an easy one.
Senator, one of the problems that we as a community have is maintaining our infrastructure and having sufficient tax base to maintain it. Money is being spent out in growth areas, and the maintenance of our existing infrastructure is being left behind.
Help me understand why you think it's more important to do the fix it first when areas like Dublin, frankly, are generating a lot of economic activity and creating a lot of jobs. They're places you might call sprawl, but frankly, you know, I see jobs there, and I think there's a lot of economic growth going on there.
Why should we supplement areas, as you've said yourself, that are growing and doing well?
If there's economic development out in the sprawl areas, let them pay for it. Why should we, the taxpayers, be paying all this money into a pool of money and it just keeps going further out?
We're looking for a balance. It's not so much taking away from others or us versus them, but we're looking for a balance. We are very much concerned that we're not going to have the tax base or the funding available to us to maintain our infrastructure. Sure. We're seeing an awful lot of state transportation dollars being used to build new roads as opposed to assisting with infrastructure problems that we have in these smaller communities.
We really need to build some new coalitions and really think regionally on how we deliver services. A very sensitive issue when you go to many local governments and deliver that message, because I've been doing that for 20 years.
Sure. The further out we build, tomorrow those places will be the first suburbs and deal with the same infrastructures that the first suburbs are dealing with. So it's going to be a perpetuation of all these difficulties. That's why it's important that we address them now.
This is just the first part of our job. We need to go home now and to continue to communicate with our representatives and other people who have some impact on this situation and keep the pressure on.
It's going to be a tough battle, but it's something that we can fight if we keep at it, and it's something that all communities all around the country are going to have to fight eventually.
We have regions that are sprawling off into the farmland, growing apart. We have to grow together.
Fix it first, reinvest. Make reinvestment a priority in these older communities, because that's the competitively and fiscally responsible thing to do.
We need a vision that will include old and new communities. We need a new American dream for the 21st century.
First, really the genesis of this dates back to November of 2006, so it's been a little over 4 years that the activity has been going. And at that time, in November of 2006, the Northeast Ohio Mayors and City Managers Association had a forum to explore the idea of regionalism. And Myron Orfield was invited to attend, who is on this short clip here. And it was extraordinarily well attended. There was a lot of interest among elected officials at that time. At about that time, the Fund for Economic Futures set of goals that came out of the Voices and Choices process came out. I think their 4 goals were economic development, workforce preparation, education, equity and economic inclusion, and finally, government efficiency and collaboration. So this forum on regionalism from the Mayor's Association coalesced with the timing of that set of 4 goals. And I think at that time they did not have a specific way to go forward on the government efficiency and collaboration. They talked to Mayor Curran, who was then the president of that association, to take this a little further. So from spring of 2007 till the spring of 2008 was an investigation called the Regional Economic Revenue Study. And our focus as mayors was on the issue of revenue and a perception among mayors that there was an unhealthy atmosphere of competition between communities for economic development for the purpose of paying for local government services. And I would argue that there's a certain dysfunctional motivation even in that from an economic development standpoint, which is a motivation to increase tax base. It's not really a purely economic development motivation. It's a motivation for the survival of that governmental entity. So we were approaching it from the standpoint of our perception of the motivating factors associated with this internal competition. We studied different regions, including the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and what we found in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area was their focus was not just on this tax disparity or disparities program they had, but their focus was on regional land use and infrastructure planning. So this was not in our notion to begin with. We came to understand that this idea of strategic regional planning with regard to land use and infrastructure was perhaps a more important component than just the tax-based sharing. So we really expanded our scope. And we reported back to the Mayor's Association in the spring of 2007, and almost unanimously, there was one vote that wasn't in support, but a tremendous support for the going forward with trying to implement these ideas of tax-based sharing and strategic regional planning. Then beginning approximately 2 years ago, after some fundraising issues, in the beginning of 2009, we began in earnest the more detailed analysis of how to implement tax-based sharing and strategic regional planning. Now, I think that's all I'm going to say right now, because I could go on a long time, and I don't think that's the intention here. So that's just a little bit of background, and I've tried to express a little bit of the fundamental notions associated with the Regional Prosperity Initiative.
Mayor Lyons, thank you very much. I'm sure you obviously did very well. I'm sure we're going to have some follow-up questions. I'm going to use this moment to run through, introduce everybody very quickly so you know who else is up here beyond just their names. Livia Brockman is with Greater Ohio. Jason Segedy is with AMATS, that's the Akron Metropolitan Area Transportation Study, which is a metropolitan planning organization similar to NOACA. And we have Steve Hamley, he's a Medina County Commissioner, and Gary Norton, Mayor of East Cleveland, just so everybody knows who everybody is. But Livia is going to speak next. And Livia, I wonder if you can give us a sense of how this issue is actually viewed across the state, too, a broader context for us.
Yeah. Let's see. Do I have, sorry. Ah, perfect.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will run through this fairly quickly. Yeah, we're here to talk about this from the state level, and I want to give also a very quick background. Greater Ohio was created 6 years ago now to address the sustainability issue in Ohio. Look at sustainable land use, how we can grow sustainably from an economic perspective. And just about a year ago, we issued a report called Restoring Prosperity Transforming Ohio's Communities to Our Next Economy, that, with the Brookings Institution. And the thrust of that report, and I'm not going to get into the details of that because I've been in this atrium before talking about it. Bruce Katz has been here talking about the national perspective. The thrust of it really is, in my mind, there is no silver bullet for turning Ohio around. But we did find that Ohio can compete in this next economy, but there are a lot of caveats to that. And the caveat that I want to focus on today is the governance reform piece of this and the restructuring that we need to do. And that's a process that, as Mayor Lyons discussed, started here over 3 years ago, and it's a process that we actually want to take statewide, and we think we are taking statewide. And the importance of that is that to get changes made here at the regional level, there have to be changes also at the state level. So we need to be making, Greater Ohio needs to be making a compelling case for that change at the state level. So we found, of course, that there are assets in all of our metropolitan areas, but to really build on those assets, we are going to have to do this governance reform, and this is about competing. This is about being able to compete with our neighbors and internationally. So to make the case that we need to make around the state, we've looked at some data that I'm going to just very quickly run through because it does make a compelling case for why we need to start changing things. And I know I'm, in a way, speaking to the converted here in this audience, but when we give this presentation around the state, there are many, many people that don't really understand the critical crisis we're at with the amount of local government we have. So we looked quickly at what's in Cuyahoga County. I was in Hamilton County last week. Cuyahoga has 103 local governments. You can see it has much greater than the Ohio County average or the national county average, but with the 16-county region, it actually brings it down to much closer to the state average. For comparison purposes, and this is important because, again, this is impeding Ohio's ability to compete, and that's the message that we're taking to legislators and to leaders in Ohio, at the state level in Columbus. We have 86% of states have fewer governments per 100 square miles than we do. And we know that this is compounded by the fact that all across the state, our population has been stagnant, particularly compared to the national growth rates. So again, making this case, the level of this burden is unsustainable, and you can see here that the total state and local government expenditures have risen much more quickly than the inflation levels. Our cities are continuing to shrink, and so this is not only do we have more local government, but we have a decreasing population to support that local government. So what's this costing us? Total expenditures, state and local governments have increased by nearly 50% since 1992. We see here that municipalities account for 90% of those costs, so there's going to be some severe cost restructuring in the legislature in the next 3 months. And these two upcoming slides are interesting in many respects, but particularly because this shows the growth of the General Revenue Fund. It shows the long, steady decline of the General Revenue Fund, but making the case more strongly that local governments are going to need to get more efficient in order to survive. This is just some data about how Ohio compares to the rest of the nation. We have 13.4 more local governments per county than the national average. And that's undercutting our competitiveness, and that's what we argue when we're all over the state and in Columbus, relative to other states. So I know I ran through a lot of data very quickly, but what we're really looking to do is aggregate what is going on to help address this issue. So we know there's a problem, and we're trying to disseminate that information around the state. But there are good things going on, and I'm not going to get into the details of these, but there's regional initiatives here with the Regional Prosperity Initiative, Northeast Mayors and Managers, and the Fund. There's a very interesting initiative in Southwest Ohio called Agenda 360, which if you all don't, I can talk about more in the question and answer. But I think this should be sort of positive reinforcement that people are coming to the similar conclusion that folks here are starting to come to, that we need to engage in collaboration and look at how to cut our costs in various ways through reduction of government. And there are local initiatives too. In Greene County, which is a county outside Dayton, looking at shared service delivery for schools, and Orville-Rittman School District, they have an administrative compact. And I give these examples not because they are the only examples, but because you can start to see that things are happening, they're bubbling up. And that's exactly what's been happening in Northeast Ohio. You all, I think, are really leading the way, but there is opportunity here to make some change. So what are our state policy recommendations in this particular area, in the governance reform area? First, we're looking at advocating that the state and local government commission be reestablished. This would be something that would look at these costs and look at, in an ongoing way, look at solutions for reform. Because we hope this would be done in a thoughtful way and not a slash and burn approach to eliminating government. Secondly, incentivizing innovative governance and service delivery, like what's going on already in Greene County and Orville-Rittman, but perhaps one approach would be taking the local government fund that unfortunately is going to be cut and using that with grants to incentivize innovation. Another is the importance of this data collection, so we know what we have and know where we can cut without dramatically affecting critical services. Making local government tax sharing permissive, and that's something that we have been talking with the mayors about. There are some challenges to that, some constitutional challenges and other challenges in that area, but we're looking at other ways to do that. And generally aligning economic development efforts so we can capitalize on the competitiveness of our entire regions, and that's certainly more easily said than done. One other thing that we'd like to advocate is re-examining these new special districts, which have risen dramatically over the last few years. Finally, I want to emphasize that this consolidation and merger are actually not new in Ohio. And we've been doing a lot of research on this, and this was actually new to me, and I was glad to see it, because Ohioans, we don't always like to do the innovative thing. So I think this gives us some strength to know that we have done this in the past, and we can, in fact, do it in new ways in the future that will move us forward. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Livia. And Jason Segedy of AMATS is going to speak next, and I'm just going to remind you of the time. Jason is also representing a new initiative and funded by HUD. It's a federal grant called Sustainable Communities, and I expect he's going to talk a little bit about that. Looks like the first slide says something about it. Fantastic. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jason Segedy. I'm the director of Akron's Metropolitan Planning Organization. And two main things I wanted to do this afternoon. One, to talk a little bit about these regional planning initiatives, as Dan mentioned. And secondly, to give a little bit of my take on where we are as a region and where I think we should go. I wanted to predicate my remarks by saying I really do believe that our entire system of governing, funding, and planning is obsolete, both at the national, the state, and the regional level. I think we're at one of those critical times in history, even for our very ahistorical outlook in this country, where we really have to recalibrate where we are, look at our institutions, look at ideas, reform, renew, and recalibrate them. Real quickly, where we are in the region, I don't think this map is a shock to anyone. The blue areas are the areas that are losing population. In the case of Cuyahoga County, the Mahoning Valley, it's probably fair to say hemorrhaging population. If you look at the tan areas on the map, these are areas that are growing. Again, this isn't really new news, but this just kind of gives you, an overview where you can see the core areas declining and the periphery growing. On top of that, we have some really serious challenges. some of which you may be aware of, some of which you may not be aware of. The Highway Trust Fund, which I work with intimately as an MPO director, is broke. It's literally broke. We borrow money from China now to pay for our roads. That's a pretty unsustainable situation. As a lot of you are familiar with, fuel taxes are down. County sales taxes, which fund our transit agencies, are down. I don't have to tell anybody about the sewer issue, the billions of dollars that we don't have, and the unhappy residents that are realizing the cost of those public utilities. On the land use side, this is a planning seminar, so again, not anything anybody doesn't know, but all this low-density development has really started to strain our infrastructure, and I think for maybe the first time in a generation, people are really starting to come to grips with that. I call this the example of why we need collaborative planning, this slide. This is Montrose in Summit County, if you're familiar with that. It's the premier retail destination, office destination in Summit County. It's got thousands of jobs, some of which are very high paying in the offices. It has a lot of retail, it's got a lot of residents. It's a place in every sense of the word except for the governmental sense. There's no such thing as Montrose from a governmental perspective. It's Fair Lawn, Bath, and Copley. This one photo probably illustrates in a nutshell everything that's wrong with our system of planning. And that's not really anybody's fault. That's how it evolved. I could have a slide like this anywhere in the United States. But you know, some of the issues here, it's impossible to do anything here without a car. There are 3 local governments in the area. Collaborating on zoning and comprehensive planning is a challenge. It really hasn't been done. I've got the Walmart and the Sam's Club just to illustrate another issue here, as those stores want to move a mile from where they are now, which you can imagine will leave us with empty stores and at the same time having to provide infrastructure for the new ones. And I would submit, I think if planning had been done differently in this area, not that it would undo everything, but there are probably literally millions of private and public sector dollars that could have been saved. And that's water under the bridge, but I just use that example as, so where do we go? And one of the things our agency's done is our Connecting Communities initiative. It basically recognizes it's unrealistic and impractical for us to just wave a magic wand and go back to the pre-World War II era. However, we are looking at ways that we can kind of incrementally modify our planning situation to try to take small steps right now toward retrofitting our suburban communities, kind of redeveloping our urban communities, and trying to put more of a premium on keeping the rural areas preserved and rural. Another interesting initiative going on right now that I think some of you are familiar with, probably more of you are not, is the HUD Sustainable Communities Planning Grant. And that was a real coup for Northeast Ohio, I think. In August, about 20 entities, including all 4 metropolitan planning organizations, got together to apply for this sustainable planning grant from the federal government. In October, we were very excited and honored to be one of the few regions in the country that was chosen in a really competitive situation. Basically, the purpose of the initiative is to come up with kind of an integrated plan for economic development, regional planning, and also to kind of rethink, I think probably the most important thing to me is our framework of ideas and institutions, what I call ideas and institutions. I look at institutions as the how of the way that we do things, but really what's more important, I think, is the ideas, which is the what and the why of what we're doing. And I would submit that we need to rethink the way we generate ideas and innovate in this region, and then send that back into the institutions, which are what can change the culture. It's a pretty ambitious project. It's 12 counties, 4 urban areas. As you can imagine, there's a lot of different needs in a lot of different communities. This is going to mean a lot of different things to different people. And just in kind of wrapping up here, this is going to be hard work, I think, with this project, but I think it's a great opportunity. Like I mentioned, 12 counties, a mix of urban, suburban, exurban, rural environments that all have different needs. And we're talking about things with this project, fiscal responsibility, sound planning, words like that I don't think anyone disagrees with in theory. But where the challenge of this initiative is going to come in, and where I think it puts our region's leaders and population to the test, is these terms do mean different things to different people. We're going to have to come to some sort of a consensus on what they mean. But I think we can. I think we have to try. And I think in trying, we might learn a lot more about ourselves and our institutions and our region. And I think I had one more slide, but I'm going to let it go here in the interest of time. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jason. Steve Hamley, Medina County Commissioner. Also on the president of the Board of NOACA, right?
That's correct.
That's correct. Fantastic.
I'm going to switch slides here a little bit. Open up the dialogue. As mentioned, I'm currently president of NOACA. I was just recently elected within the last couple weeks, actually. This is my third time around. But I've also been involved with the RPI steering committee, so I'm intimately involved with the whole process. Even though I'm not a city manager or a mayor, I guess they invited a county commissioner who can represent one of those growing counties. And as you saw from the map there, we had some significant growth over the last number of years. A lot of that, where were that brown area, primarily just, that's where the population went. Having been born there, raised there, that obviously raised some concerns. What I have here is I've got two slides basically. It's what's called a genuine progress indicator. Bagstadt and Shaman had published this sometime last year, which providing a numerical, I guess, indicator of what's really going on in our region, and comparing all the counties for all sorts of a number of variables, economic variables, social variables, and environmental variables, and kind of putting it and monetizing it, and coming back with I guess, a relative way of looking, are we really making genuine progress? And I think it's going to emphasize some points I want to present. First off, you can see, and I've used these two slides over the last 9 months in Medina County, so we're very much familiar. As you can see, Medina County is one of those leading ones. Us and Geauga County are basically up there and have, I guess the trend has been upward. It has somewhat declined in some, but we've been generally up, at least up until 2005. Over the last 5-6 years, maybe it's gone down a little bit, but I think we're probably still well above average. We're well above the rest of the region. Unfortunately, that can lead to one or two conclusions, and some people might suggest that what that means is basically we're an oasis. In other words, this is where people go because it's better than any place else for all sorts of various reasons. Or secondly, we're basically at the top deck of a ocean liner that has sprung a leak, and we're basically just we're still floating down to the water, but the natural tendency, of course, is to think of ourselves as an oasis and ignores the linkages, and that's what I'm using this chart really to present the dangers. You want to know, when we talk about RPI and what the barriers that are to overcome when we start talking about really regionalization, and especially with the tax growth sharing and also the land use planning, you're going to have that oasis tendency. You're going to see in my county, many people say, we got it good, why should we be worried about the other communities? And I think that put that back up. There you go. Really, the indicators themselves, I think, help the context understanding that we really do have linkages. Sure, in terms of personal consumption per capita, income distribution, consumption for adjustment for income inequality, all these, the value of volunteer work, all these are very important indicators. But as you evaluate each of them, they do have, when you look at them, I think, impacts across borders. It fails to, when you look at my working population, over about half of my population leaves the county every day to work someplace else. So our jobs are linked. When things are bad, when factories close down, when businesses decline in Cuyahoga, Summit, or the adjoining counties, we're hurt too. Maybe not as much, but we're still hurt the same. And so when you look at all these indicators, and I think it's very important to evaluate that all these things do cross barriers. Water pollution, cross barriers. Air pollution, cross barriers. Noise pollution. Even the loss of farmland and wetlands, cross barriers in terms of aquifer replenishment and so forth. Depletion of non-renewable resources. All these things, they cross barriers. So I think we can look at the data, we can look at it very closely as a county and say, well, we're the oasis, we're doing better than everybody else, we're growing population. All our schools, we're the only county in the state of Ohio that all our schools for the second year in this last number of years have rated as excellent. Some are in fiscal emergency now. Well, we've got financial problems just like anybody else. But in terms of educational quality and performance, they're all excellent. But we just can't. We have to look further at the data. We have to look at the tendency, the trend, the cost of crime, the cost of family breakdown. Family breakdown also affects our county. It comes with a cost. And so I think what we do is you look at it and say, where do we have opportunities to work together? Where do we have opportunities to collaborate? The RPI initiative is the start of the conversation. The RPI is the start of that initiative. I think the next successor, and I'm glad Jason Hegarty was able to bring this up, I think the HUD Sustainable Communities Grant and that collaboration offers us the opportunity to complete the conversation, to move to the next level beyond the RPI, to actually start talking about these other areas of underemployment, the social variables, the environmental variables, the economic variables, and attack it as a group and as a region. So I can say as the board president for NOACA, we are going to devote ourselves, since we are a partner to this, we're just not going to be the fiscal agent. As I told the board after becoming president, our intentions are not just to be a pass-through agency. What we really need to do is take that planning effort and integrate it within our 5-county area, within our planning agencies, within our communities, with our elected leaders. That's the only way that we're going to be able to succeed, is by taking that effort and bringing it all the way down through our institutions, a multi-sector approach, not only through government, but also through our businesses and also our nonprofits and religious communities. So we really need to address it regionally. As I said, the RPI is that initiative, that beginning of the conversation. The HUD Sustainables Grant should be the next continuation. And I look forward to hearing from you all as to how you think we ought to take the next step. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve Hambley.
All right, good. As an alumnus of this college, I have attended many, many forums as a student, as a professional, that invigorated and stimulated me, and I attended others that put me to sleep. So I'm happy and honored to be one of those people who will probably put you to sleep. But it gives me great pleasure to be here among this esteemed group of folks addressing people who are truly interested in something that affects all of our lives. I think that what we're talking about with the Regional Prosperity Initiative is really collectively thinking about how we bring about a list and put into action those things that are the best among all of our communities, those assets that we value, those things that can attract individuals and families who are the type of people that you want to have living in a region, and those things that attract businesses based on what those businesses need, if it's fresh water, if it's a vibrant downtown, if it's easy access to markets, if it's great places for their employees to live, work, and play, if it's horrible sports teams. We have it all. We have it all here in North. That's a joke. You can laugh about that. And I have my Green Bay Packers ties for anybody who wants to wear one and get fired from their job. But as a community who, coming right after Commissioner Steve Hambley, who rates his schools as excellent, and I saw your chart up there where everything is growing, I'm from one of those communities that is an inner ring suburb that we saw in the film that has suffered over the past years, that has suffered from economic flight, that has suffered from what many call white flight, but we've also suffered from opportunity flight. Those folks who had the means, whether it was an individual or family or a business, who had the means to move to what they saw as a better pasture for something that they'd like in life, who moved to Pepper Pike or moved to Richfield for the quality of education or for the quality of house or for the quality of shopping opportunities. There are cities like that that once vibrant, East Cleveland was the place where people flocked to. And in some cases now it's a place where people flee from. And it moves further and further out every time we take a look. But a place like East Cleveland has a lot to offer. We have the gift of geographic location that is next to one of the largest, most powerful economic engines in Northeast Ohio, and maybe even in the Midwest. And that is, we are at the doorstep of University Circle. Anybody heard of that? A place where there are thousands of people employed, the hotbed of healthcare innovation, research and development, the hotbed of academia, the hospitals are there, arts and culture, institutions that are the best between New York and California are located right in University Circle. That place is landlocked. Everyone wants to be there, whether it's a business or resident. A lot of people want to live at University Circle. What we realize in East Cleveland is that we offer an outlet or an extension of University Circle along the Euclid Corridor, the main retail spine of Northeast Ohio. And we have 2 suburban transportation hubs in East Cleveland, 2 rapid stations, and we can make it very, very easy for people who cannot afford what they want at University Circle, or people who cannot find what they want at University Circle, to come half a mile up the street for half the price. While we don't have the same financial things to contribute to the Regional Prosperity Initiative, we have many, many assets that in some cases are more valuable even than cash. We have the ability to locate where people want to locate but can't, and can't afford it, and we can provide that. We also, because of our economic status, have the ability to attract federal grants to demolish vacant and abandoned properties that right now stand in the way of new development that could be adjacent to University Circle, and really bridge the border, blur the border between cities, and provide economic, housing, financial opportunities for everyone here in Northeast Ohio. And what I'm talking about is just a very small city. Just a very small city, the city of East Cleveland, something that we haven't even talked about all of our assets yet. But every city, every single city in this region has something to offer. And what I like about this is that we have created a place, we are creating a place where we can come together not to talk about which city, is it East Cleveland, Cleveland Heights, Richfield, or Cleveland gets that manufacturing company that everyone's seeking, and who's willing to be the biggest loser. Who's willing to give up the most taxpayer money to the company that's coming here? Who's going to deplete us? We can get away from that and say, if we get that company here and we all cooperate, we can probably attract not only that company but more. So let's get together and talk about what it is that we can do. A number of things that we can work on are, like Mayor Lyons said, planning and land use. Why is it that I have to have my own building and housing department? Aren't our building codes in Ohio the same? Aren't our housing codes in Ohio the same? Why can't we regionalize that service and save our cities money and send out housing inspectors, send out building inspectors when we need them, and not just have our cities go broke on that type of service? But when we talk about sharing, when we talk about giving up as the East Cleveland mayor an opportunity to attract a business or an opportunity to attract residents so Matt Zone in Cleveland can get them in his neighborhood, that can be dangerous for an elected official. Elected officials are elected to serve a specific group of residents that live within a specific city or a specific county. And the danger, the real political danger, and this conversation is good, but the real political danger is that we put our own careers in peril when we talk about giving up our taxpayers' money from within our boundaries so that someone else can benefit. That's a real political danger. But one thing about the third-party, think tank, apolitical, institutional approach to this is that you create what I need, quite frankly, and what Commissioner Hambly needs, what Mayor Lyons needs, is a safe space to really talk about this. You're creating the cultural acceptance in Northeast Ohio that this economy, these shifts that we are seeing, this global competition is forcing us into a structure, into a situation where if we don't give up the territorial claims that we've had to finances and land use in the past, that we are absolutely going to perish, and if we perish, we're going to be a suburb to nowhere. And there is only one reason why people move to East Cleveland or anywhere around Cleveland, is because the jobs and economic development opportunities are in the core mother city or around it, and we have nice places to live and good things to do. So in a couple seconds, Dan, I'll wrap up because I know that we're short on time. We must, as elected officials, take the risk of putting our political careers on the line to change the culture of Northeast Ohio. And we must communicate not only that we might be willing to risk giving up our own resources to serve another community, we might also have to put ourselves out of business. As the mayor of East Cleveland, I understand that one day there might not be a city of East Cleveland as it exists today. There might not be a city of Cleveland as it exists today. There might one day be a city called Cuyahoga. That's what we now view as Cuyahoga County. Now, I know I make my own staff nervous when I talk like this. But again, that is a political risk, but it's for the good of all. And lastly, there are laws in the state of Ohio. Cities would love to save money. Cities would love to collaborate with each other. Matt Zone and I, we know that we would love to collaborate on fire. Quite frankly, I'm interested in a conversation that would combine the fire and EMS departments of Cleveland and East Cleveland. I'm interested in that. I'm also interested in having Cleveland workers pick up trash in East Cleveland. We will pay, as a city, for the city of Cleveland to pick up our trash, and we achieve economy of scale. Cleveland makes more money, we save money, and I'll get to the last 30 seconds. But there's a law in the state of Ohio that prevents the city of East Cleveland from purchasing trash pickup services from the city of Cleveland. And we didn't know that until we actually tried to do it. So some of these things, and again, these think tanks are good, we need to advocate not only to our local elected officials, but also to the state of Ohio. Just give us the flexibility. We don't need a money, we don't need a handout, we don't need a check. We just need the ability under the law to do these things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Norton. We actually don't have very much time to continue the conversation up here because we want you to have a chance to have the conversation down at the tables. But I do have this clarifying question, and Jason Sagady, I wonder if you can answer this because you're the planner on the panel here, and not everybody in this room is a planner, despite where we are. What does it really mean if RPI is successful and collaborative planning becomes what we do? What does that actually look like? Nuts and bolts. Tell the story.
I think that's a great question, and I think we definitely need to put, like I mentioned, ideas and innovation, and then those kind of informing our institutions. I think we have to be careful when we just throw around the word collaboration that it doesn't turn into one of those buzzwords that we're so fond of in government and in planning in general, because I think with the whole concept of collaboration, you know, the slide I showed of the Montrose area, I'm not real confident that area would look any different if that was one government, even though I think the fact there's 3 governments involved didn't help things. So I think just the sense of, oh, we can just consolidate our way out of the problem isn't enough. I mean, collaboration is crucial and we need to do it, but I think the way that we strategically decide to do it is really important. And as far as what the formula is, I'm not sure I'm smart enough to answer that now either.
Does it mean if Walmart wants to go from a normal store to a superstore 1,000 feet away, that it's not just Bath, Copley, and Fairlawn that have to sign off on that, but that actually, if we did have a 12-county or a 16-county collaborative planning structure, that would have to go through that agency, and that it would have to meet the actual economic needs of the entire region in order for that to happen?
Well, that's a good question as far as the kind of the institutional piece that I was talking about. And one of the things that we've talked about both with the Sustainable Communities Initiative that's just kind of in its infancy right now, and on one of the land use communities of practice I'm on with RPI is we're not convinced that just creating a mega institution, you know, like the 12 or 16 county, I mean, in a lot of ways that could make it even more of a nightmare if it's not set up in the right way. So again, I kind of go back to the idea of trying to find a framework that's workable and not just imposing another layer of government over everything.
Mike Lyons, could you clarify a little bit about what would happen if RPI is successful?
Well, I think you have to go back a step, and when you talk about a situation like the Walmart and Montrose, we're in a reactive mode. So I think the idea here is not to try to, this isn't a solution to the immediate problems that we have to react to. It is moving to a more proactive planning process, I think, is really what we're advocating. So that, and that's not an issue, it's not a fight over authority. It's really a process of true dialogue and planning for the future. We tend to see everything short term. And we live short term. We have problems like the Montrose Walmart, and we live in an environment where the only thing we're doing is reacting to that. If our focus is on that type of planning, then we aren't really advancing to new ways of doing things. If we can't move to a proactive, longer-term planning process, then we aren't really making a difference. So we have to frame it differently, I think.
one of the short-term challenges we have right now is about time and the fact that Bill Batchelder is in the building and won't be forever. So we do have to move our agenda along. So what we're going to do now, could I have all the facilitators who have volunteered their time to be here today, could you raise your hands real quick so everybody knows who you are? And those of you in the back who aren't at a table, if you'd like to come forward, there's plenty of room up front here, and we'd love to have you come forward. Before you do, though, because that's going to create a lot of noise as well, elected representatives in the room. I know there are a number of you here. Could you all raise your hands too? And other government officials? If you all would do me the favor of spreading out, so there's not more than one of you at any table, that would help spread the love, if you know what I'm saying. So please do that. That would be great. And again, all of you in the back, please come down and make yourself comfortable at a table. Yeah, you may bring your chairs, but you don't have to, because there's probably about 12 or 15 chairs that are empty up front. So please come on down, and what we're going to be talking about here is this wide range of collaborative opportunities. It's everything from combining to source road salt or combining fire departments to completely recreating the government of Cuyahoga, the city of the 21st century. But your facilitators will lead the conversation, then we'll be reporting out to House Speaker Bill Batchelder. So I turn it over now to your facilitators. Thank you very much. Yeah. To Batchelder? Yeah. No, I'll come actually 5:35. Yeah. Facilitators will be going until 5:35. Use your time wisely. Okay. Mike, you got a minute? Sure. Okay, I'm going to shoot a video right now. Okay. Man, you're smart. You know what we're doing. So, I want you to tell me all the reasons why Dave Anderson is going to turn on the video. There we go. We have roughly a half hour right now to do some work that could really occupy probably half a year at least. But I think it's important that we give as many of you as we can a chance to tell us and tell the speaker and also the panelists who are now spread out around the room what you came to at your tables. What kinds of collaboration do you want to see? What kinds of collaborative efforts would you like to support, and would you like to see the legislature make possible? Because as Mayor Norton pointed out earlier, there are some very simple legal problems and constitutional problems that prevent even the most straightforward sorts of collaborations. So if we could get a facilitator or a recorder from one of the tables who had something who really came to consensus. I'm going to start calling on people in a second, Mike Shafarenko. But if we've got any table that would very much like to share, right here, okay, right in front. And then somebody in the back, you guys, you've got to participate too, but let's start in the front here.
First, and then I can listen, right? We had a very, what you'd call, spirited conversation. This is what we agree on, that collaboration is very important, and one of the outcomes of collaboration is efficiency, but not always. The cost, especially in the short run, can go up. If one municipality has equipment and another one doesn't, I mean, there are all kinds of variables in this. It's very messy, as one of the speakers said initially, that we feel that quality in the short run sometimes suffers too during collaboration. But we all agreed that this is the way to go and that ultimately it will create efficiencies. We also feel that mindset plays an important part in whether you're willing to collaborate or not, and to find ways to do it. So that's a first step, to just be in a collaborative frame of mind. The thing we did not agree upon and had very divided opinions was tax sharing. And this may surprise some of the people here, because we heard a lot more about why it was not a good thing. We didn't have a chance. Those of us that support it, we didn't talk as much about that as we might. So this is a snapshot. We talked about growth boundaries and the worthiness of that in Oregon. And we talked about immigration, the need for a welcome center here, and bring population to Cleveland. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our table had an excellent discussion, and we agreed on a number of main statements. Primarily that the benefits of collaboration are great, and these include not only cost savings, but also natural resource protection, the ability to market and grow our region collectively, and also to protect our most vulnerable citizens. We also agreed that there are a lot of risks, but every time someone in our group mentioned a risk, they also mentioned a way to overcome it. So we think that these risks can be overcome. And finally, one of our members pointed out, and we all agreed, that in the last question, the financial strain, the word preceding that is inevitable, and that should probably be in capital letters, because this is an inevitable strain that's coming along, and we need state support in order to address this and to prepare for this. Not receiving state support really shouldn't be an option. We need the flexibility in order to collaborate, to work together, and to address these strains and these challenges that we know are coming. Thank you.
Thank you. We're only getting volunteers in the front. I know that people in the back had more to say too. Okay. We'll hear from a couple more, and then I'll ask the speaker some questions, and we'll let you ask him some questions as well.
We are unanimous that we need to find a way to match the size of government to what we can sustain. We are not sure tax sharing is the first step, because that's hard to tell, and there's been so little education about it. We agree that there is tremendous need for education on all these issues. And other ideas needed: a mechanism for cooperation, a framework for regional communication and planning, service delivery collaboration. Sharing is a first step. Thorough review of laws and rules that need to be changed, and state priorities should be to fix it first, not build new.
Thank you very much. Any others? We have another one up front or anywhere. Pick one. Kathy Hexter, go ahead. Thank you.
I'm going to keep this short. You can keep moving around. But what was interesting at our table is that we represented Bedford, South Euclid, Cleveland Heights, Cleveland, and Bath, including the Montrose Mess, and that we were unanimous in our feeling that collaboration was essential. Particularly noticing the places that we already do collaborate, so there's room to improve and build on that. In police and fire services, there's great examples that continue to grow, and that economic overlay districts are an important part, but most importantly, preventing sprawl. That even for those of us in Bath and in Cleveland and in South Euclid, preventing sprawl is an important priority on all sides.
Okay, I think we'll take one more, but here, everybody, please hand in your sheets, leave them on your table, and we'll collect them, because these will all be posted on our various websites.
And we'll be supplying feedback to all this feedback to the speaker's office.
So your comments are not lost. Okay, one more. Okay, we'll go right over here.
Here's Bruce.
Mr. Speaker, good to have you here, sir. We also had a very spirited discussion. Not everybody agreed. We had an interesting discussion leading off as to what do we stand to lose in individual rights and power and identity if there is more mergers, acquisitions, collaborations. But the kind of collaborations we did suggest, not unusual, not unlike some that have already been asked or mentioned, is better land use. Keep farmland open. Let's stop the sprawl. Better service delivery, and there were several examples there that came up, and that is the fact that we could do more collaboration and more working together among the school systems. that here you have very rich school systems, power ones, and then right nearby some that are having a lot of trouble. We've got to work to try to equalize that situation and get a better balance there. The nonprofits should group together to request funding to work with a number of areas to improve situations. And we are, the feeling was that whether you have it in EMS and fire or in other service delivery like that, and service rubbish, trash pickup, there's a lot that communities can do together. This goes back to Mayor Norton's point, the fact that the state law, Mr. Speaker, needs to be changed to allow more collaboration among the municipalities and not have it be that blocked. But we had a very good discussion here. Thank you.
Mayor Akers, thank you very much. And thank you also to all of the facilitators and all of you for bringing this input to these tables and to this conversation. Mr. Speaker, let's just start with Mayor Akers' last point. Is there support in the legislature right now, or at least in your house,
that's the upper house.
Exactly. To change laws to allow for more government collaboration in the very straightforward manner that Mayor Akers and Mayor Norton described?
Obviously.
Are we on? There you are.
A lot of times people just soon I turn my mic off, but thank you.
I'll do one of these if you get unruly.
All right. One time Vern Reif shut my mic off, and the next morning I came to the floor with a dog muzzle on, and he looked all around the chamber and he couldn't find me when I was standing up for recognition. So, it's an old story. First of all, those sections of code which would prohibit cooperation between subdivisions, that's ridiculous, and particularly at a level like garbage collection, for crying out loud. And it's something I'm going to go back and look at immediately, because when there are going to be cuts, as I think everyone in this room knows, the state is in tough shape, and so there will be cuts in the local government fund. Now, Ohio has always had a prejudice in favor of sending, compared to other big states, sending money back to the local people so they do what they think is important. Frankly, I do not know what is the most important thing in Pataskala in Licking County, and probably won't know in my lifetime. But those people there know. So one of the things that we have always tried to do is to send money back from the state and compare it to other Middle Western states, and we've done a pretty good job. At this point in time, however, the revenue to the state is markedly bad news. 17% of our budget is not there. 17% of the general revenue fund budget is not there. So that's the unfortunate thing where we start. However, it gives us an opportunity to make some of the changes that you've discussed here today. That is, there isn't enough money, and so therefore people have to cooperate more. And one of the things that you learn in an area like Medina County is that the volunteer firemen really don't have trouble cooperating. When there's a fire in an adjacent township and there's a problem as a result, all of the fire departments in the area respond. That is different perhaps from urban approaches, but it also exists for police protection. The support of the sheriff in various communities where they frankly cannot hire enough people to have a patrol at night. Those kinds of things are done on that sort of a basis. The concept of collaboration, I think, is very important. We started in 1974 collaborating among our schools, and we have a central school operation, the ECS, which perhaps doesn't exist in the same way here that it would in Medina County. But at the end of the day, what they did was, first of all, start buying supplies together. Secondly, they straightened out the fact that at one point, school buses were running up and down the road each direction because they went to different schools along the borderline. They have now reached the point where people who want to teach in Medina County send their application into that central operation, and they in turn make those available to the school districts that want to hire one junior high school math teacher or whatever. It's centralized, and it's done in a way that is collaborative. And at one point, I think one of the most remarkable things was Wadsworth City Schools was able to purchase a right-of-way into Akron, which fortunately darn near hit Akron U. And consequently, they were able to just do for themselves a fiber optic system that would help Wadsworth City. That's not how it happened. That's not what happened. They came out and talked to all of the other schools in the county, and together brought fiber optic to every school in the county. And on top of that, we're able to bring classes of various kinds in conjunction and cooperation to every school in the county. Those are the kinds of things that people have to be oriented toward. In urban areas is often a certain amount of cross-border hostility, I guess.
I think we've got a new microphone coming for you, sir. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I just raise those issues as issues that show that if people really want to cooperate, they can cooperate. And sometimes you have to make a sacrifice in one place or the other in order to get the result.
Let me, Mr. Speaker, let me dig into the local government funds. You referenced that earlier, and you, in the same breath, I think, as you referenced the 17% shortfall that the state is facing.
Right.
So I imagine that's going to create a 17% shortfall in local government funds, or perhaps more, because there are certain other things that the state can't cut. So with less money coming, there was a suggestion earlier from Livia Brockman that perhaps some of more innovation and encourage more collaboration, the kind of grants and granting that we saw in Northeast Ohio through Efficient Gov Now, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Is that are we likely to see something like that in the coming budget?
Not in the first year. The first year is just, it's just god-awful. That's all I can say to you. We're going to have to dramatically cut a lot of state services, and we will try not. Ohio basically is a local government state, and so what we need to be doing is trying to continue that, and that will involve doing as little in the way of cuts as we can. The last administration tried to bring a great deal more to the state level, and that's not a good thing. We just don't know what other different areas need. I've talked to the governor at some length about this, and I think we're in a not unanimous opinion, because obviously the formulas haven't been finished. The budget isn't done, obviously. So we're in a position where we don't know for sure what we can do, but I think that there will be an effort to protect local government. Our big problem in the state, and I don't think this is a secret to any of you, is Medicaid. And it's just eating up the seed corn of the state like mad. We have to change Medicaid, and we have to change it pretty quickly. Thank you. The difficulties there are that we have been a state that did not file for very many waivers. Some states have wavered a lot of things. We have also not done what we really have to do in the way of policing the applications of Medicaid. But I'm very blessed. I have chairman of the Finance Committee who's already been chairman of the Finance Committee once in the past. With term limits, we play a heck of a time getting things done. But I'm blessed. I have Ron Amstutz and I have John Kerry, who chaired in both houses. And so they're going to be working on this. We have 3 people who have been committed to working on Medicaid now. They're in their 3rd terms. And so we're going to be able to focus in on this thing.
So that doesn't mean, though, that the local government funds will be intact. No. It just means they won't be cut as much as some other places.
That's right. Our priority will be to try to protect the local government fund and the school funds.
If you were going to tell the mayors here, and there are a few in the audience, steel yourself,
yes,
prepare for a blank % cut.
15. And it'll vary from city to city. There are some cities that are more well off than others. We will have to take that into account. Even more so, there are some schools that are better off than others. and we will definitely take that into account. So you're looking at about 15 at this point. Now, if there's a turnaround before that, as everybody in Washington seems to run around and talk about, obviously that changes things. I don't think they know what they're talking about.
I just want to dig into this a little bit more, too. In the Strickland administration, with the last budget cycle, we saw the budget shortfall projections change month to month and become drastically worse than original projections were. How confident are you in the current projections? We've been hearing the $8 billion deficit. You've given the 17% number. Are you confident in that, or is it going to be worse?
I would be more comfortable with 9 myself.
$9 billion.
Right. But at this point in time, we do not have the projections that we have to have. This budget's big. I mean, it's $52 billion. And, you know, to try and figure out precisely where we are at any given point is difficult. Unfortunately, what happened in the Strickland administration was all of the one-time money that came flowing out of Washington to create jobs or whatever the heck it was for was used and expended in that administration.
Sure.
And we should have been planning for the future, knowing...
Not all of it, Speaker.
How much was that?
There was $400 million that never got spent.
There you go. If that'll help people here, maybe we can put it in a basket and bring it up. No, the 400 wasn't actually there either. It's a little less than that. But the point is that we obviously face a tremendous problem, and I don't think, I have a lot of friends in the House of Representatives down there now. Didn't used to, but do now. And
Isn't that how you got to be Speaker?
Well, in Ohio, but in Washington, yeah, we have another Ohioan, and I would have to say that I do not think that it is their goal to expand the size of the federal government.
Let me move over to the tax sharing, or the tax-based sharing piece of this, which is something that that raises hackles and inspires a certain amount of dissent. We've seen it here at some of the tables too. Where do you fall on this proposal?
I frankly do not have a comprehension of how you would levy that sort of consensual. I mean, we'd have to, first of all, there are constitutional issues always. Our Constitution is pretty clear on taxation, and so we'd have to first go through that test, and then I think we'd have to do computer runs to see what the impact of whatever we're looking at is before we would be satisfied to advocate for it.
Some people who would probably align themselves politically with you on the right and identify themselves as conservative would characterize this, the RPI proposal, as tax-based sharing, as too close to, in the current political rhetoric, it comes out sounding like too close to socialism or something like that. But really, it's just sort of, it's more just, I don't like that, right?
Right.
Generally speaking, with this idea, though, of tax-based sharing, as politically, where do you see, is it something you could support?
I have to see the printouts, and I have to see what the Constitution says. I'm one of those guys that I always read the Constitution.
You think before you speak?
Yeah, exactly. And I just, at this point in time, I don't think any of us could speak. Well, I have some members who could.
Well, I guess, I mean,
but they wouldn't know what they were talking about.
Say you worked out the constitutional issues. Say you could, that could be worked out. You could design it in such a way that you wouldn't have to pass a constitutional amendment.
Right.
But in the end, you'd effectively be saying taxes paid in one municipality, some portion of that can be shared in another municipality.
Beyond JEDs.
Beyond JEDs, beyond a joint economic development district, or joint economic district, whatever that refers to, yes.
Right.
Would that be okay with you?
I just don't have enough information in that question to know what the impact would be. I mean, we don't want to take money away from the inner ring suburbs. We don't want to, I mean, there are a lot of things that we'd have to really know in advance what the implications are.
It's really about taking money away from the outer ring suburbs.
I was afraid that was your answer,
Well, Well, what about this issue of the consolidation and things? You said you're going to get on it as soon as you get back to Columbus, and I'm sure you have an aide somewhere who's probably already on it right now. It's been added to his to-do list.
They play with these little things and.
That's right. That's right. Can we expect in the coming months to hear about legislation introduced to allow for immediate collaboration between municipalities?
Absolutely. It doesn't make any sense that they can't. They have home rule under the Constitution, and under home rule, they ought to have the ability to cooperate. I think I have an idea where this came from. Sounds to me like something perhaps organized labor might have led us to.
I don't know. I'm sure.
I'll do the research.
You'll do the research. I'm sure you will, and we can talk more. We lost the microphone that was over there, but I'm sure we can find another. If anybody has any particular questions for the speaker, we've got about 5 or 7 more minutes, I think, and we do have another microphone up here that I'll just hand off to somebody. Any questions?